conversation and where Labor thinks regulations could go now.
Great. Fantastic. Thanks very much for that, and I'm really happy to be here tonight. I think this is such an important discussion, so I was very keen to be here for it. I'm really glad you're doing it, and especially in a community like this, which really is at the forefront of some of the challenges that other communities we know will face down the track if this isn't fixed. So I'm really glad you're conducting this tonight. I also want to acknowledge that we meet on Gadigal land, pay respect to elders past and present, and look forward to a day when we begin the journey towards treaty in New South Wales. I think that'll be a really important step for our state to learn more about the world. This has been a fantastic committee and process to be involved in. It's David's really led it as the chair, but it's been quite a good cooperation really between the opposition and the crossbench, looking at the system of building standards in the state and just saying we can't allow this to continue on in the way it has. So I want to thank David for the work he's done, but it's been a very good example of Parliament working together. Linda, of course, has appeared as one of our star witnesses and really, put the case for some of the things that have got to change. And, similar way to what David's just done now, she was able to tell the Parliament the history of all these reports, one on the other, one on top of the other, which have said, look, there needs to be some sort of rebalancing of regulation in this area. I'll just make a couple of broader observations because we've really covered a lot of the ground here. The first is this: I really feel like this is one of those examples of a situation where there's a set of answers sitting on the shelf, and you've heard about two of those key reports, waiting for someone to ask the question, why don't we do this? And I hope that the process that's going on at the moment will be part of asking that question. There is a blueprint that's been spelt out in these two key reports about what you might do to fix this problem, but it hasn't been acted upon. And just to underline how little it's been acted upon, last year in October we debated an urgent bill through the Parliament that scooped up just a handful of the softest recommendations, a handful of things you might start with. You certainly wouldn't finish with them. And this was raced through the Parliament. We were told it was urgent. This was going to fix the problem. This was going to lead to a crackdown in the industry. That legislation still hasn't been implemented. It still has not been put into force by the government. So it just
They've
gives you...
almost finished drafting the regulations.
Yeah. So it just gives you some sense of how slow the progress has been here. They're about to re-legislate, but again, they're going to scoop up just a handful of the things that it might take to fix this. So really, it does require a much more comprehensive approach. That's certainly what I think we'll be calling for as that legislation comes through the Parliament before the end of the year. So on that building standards side of things, I think that's probably my key perspective on it. I did want to mention flammable cladding though. The other issue we've turned to, it's in some ways, it's obviously there's some real concerns about it in specific buildings here in New South Wales, also in other states, particularly in Victoria. The contrast though between how this has been dealt with in Victoria and what's happened in New South Wales is really striking. In Victoria, there is a fund of $600 million to help communities, buildings get on with fixing this. There is a standalone agency, there is a prioritisation task going on. None of that is in place in New South Wales. There's a clear model for how you might do it, and years on from when we realised this is an issue, and it's a top level issue, that has not happened in New South Wales. So one of the things that could happen immediately is for the government and the Building Commissioner to pick up the model from Victoria and get on and help have some funding at the table, have a prioritisation process, just get on and fix some of these issues. So that's probably my second view. The third thing I'd say, just for context, is just really to say this is a government that is, in my view, it's working across a range of fronts, but there's two things that really make its heart beat faster. One is balancing the budget bottom line, and the other is really development issues and driving development along. I say that as someone who's been campaigning to make sure we deal with the music venue crisis across the city, to drive arts, culture and music back into the sort of city Sydney is. And despite the government MPs being open to some of those ideas, really their approach is very much developer focused. So I think it's an important context when we're thinking about the reasons why we might be stuck dealing with these particular issues. This is a government very worried about upsetting that developer lobby. So they're probably three quick views. I'll finish on this. There definitely are some costs of re-regulating this industry. There will be costs. What I do want to focus on briefly to finish though is what's the cost if we don't do something? And that could potentially be very significant. What we're facing across Sydney and across New South Wales, a couple of other bits of New South Wales, is a loss of confidence in a particular style of building built in a particular period. And if that general loss of confidence in those buildings really broadens, and you can see it already in the discussion about the insurance industry, that is going to have a real impact on people's lives. It'll have a real impact on the state economy, and that'll have an impact on all of us. So there is a cost here to not acting, and that cost increases the less confident people feel about whether this industry is properly regulated or not. So for me, that is now one of the key drivers, now that we've seen these dramatic examples of why there has to be action to address these issues.